sure it's on too.
Oh. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hey, Ninja, Hare Ball. You're getting big. Hare Ball. Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. He's moving about really nicely. Jai. Namaste. Welcome to our program. Jai. Okay. Hare Krishna. Probably not. Jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our program. Welcome you all to our program. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. We have song sheets for everyone?
Yes.
Is this the...
Oh,
This is not it. Okay. So we'll do Jai Radha Madhava, the first song on the song sheet, along with a few others there. Just try to follow along. You want me to flip this?
we're not going to play right now.
Go ahead and do it now. Hare Radhe Radhe, Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda Radhe, Radhe Radhe, Govinda, Govinda. Jaya, Jaya Gaura Premanandi, Shri Radhe, Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham. Gaur Haribo. Okay. Everyone will be patient with us for a few minutes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyanatimirandasya Ghenanjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We're studying Sri Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, which is entitled Sankhya Yoga. Yoga means to link or to connect with the Supreme. The living being, in his practice of yoga, in his ultimate perfection, is to link himself through the awakening of loving devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That full perfection of yoga is called Bhakti Yoga. So we're reading from the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga, and Sankhya Yoga means an analytical study of the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada terms it contents of the Gita summarized. So we're beginning with text 40. Krishna says, "In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear." Srila Prabhupada quotes in his purport a verse. He says there's a nice verse in this connection found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profit the man if he gain the whole world, yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Here Krishna is encouraging us that in this endeavor, or in the practice of spiritual life, there will never be any loss or diminution. And whatever advancement we make on this path will certainly protect us from the most dangerous type of fear, that is, entering again into the cycle of transmigration, where there are 8,400,000 of species of life. The Vedas describe actually that the human form of life is the point of spiritual evolution. It is from this point we actually can transcend the material or the animalistic inclinations and rise up to the awakening of our true spiritual nature. This is the changing point, the junction point. Evolution through the 8,400,000 species of life has brought us to the human form. Now Vedanta Sutra describes atato brahma jigas. Now you're in the human form of life. It is the time to investigate, to inquire as to the nature of the supreme reality. Go beyond simply the animalistic urges for eating and sleeping and maintaining comfortable household life. Go beyond that and seek the nature of the self. And do not be in any type of fearful condition, Krishna says here, because even a little endeavor on this path will bring about the greatest gain. There will never be any loss or diminution. In the material conception of activities, everything is based upon a strict law of action and reaction. And so when we perform an action, even if it is good and rewards us with a good result, ultimately that good result soon becomes lessened as we live out that karma. Just like a man may endeavor to work very hard, putting a little aside just so that he can take his vacation here in Hawaii. And then soon he has to go back. As the bank account whittles down, he has a certain amount he can spend. So within this material world, every action that we perform certainly has its reactions, good and bad. But the nature of such activities that Krishna is speaking about, where he says, in this endeavor for spiritual perfection, there's never any loss or diminution. The Sanskrit word is shreyas. Shreyas means that which gives us the highest good, which is never subject to any negative reaction which brings about a loss or diminution. So here Krishna encourages us, and he describes that those who are on this path become resolute in purpose, and their aim becomes focused upon the one supreme reality. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. The nature of the mind is described in the Vedic literatures as chanchalam. Chanchalam means flickering. We know anyone who has ever achieved something worth achieving within this world has had a great focus, has worked hard for achieving his end, achieving his perfection, whatever it may be. Someone wants to be a musician, for instance. It's not an easy task. It takes many years of practice, going through our scales again and again. Anyone who has achieved a degree at the university, PhD and so forth, knows it takes many years of study, hard work. And what that requires then is a focus upon the achievement of that goal. So what to speak of spiritual life? One has to become, as Krishna says here, resolute in purpose. One has to become focused on the purpose of this life. As we described, that the Vedanta Sutra begins with the aphorism, atato brahma jigas. It is now in the human form of life. You've come to this pinnacle of evolution. It is time now to go beyond the cycle of birth and death and achieve one's spiritual perfection. The Vedas say, tattvamasi, you are that. You are of that nature. You are of that spiritual nature. That you must become. In order to achieve your spiritual perfection, aham brahmasmi, you must take on or manifest the godly qualities. Jiva Goswami, he describes that aphorism Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am spirit, means to identify ourselves with the godly qualities of the Supreme Reality. We are actually spiritual by nature because, as Krishna has already explained in our first study of the Bhagavad Gita, that we are spiritual sparks. We have all emanated from the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Godhead. So what God possesses, we must also possess. What the fire possesses, the spark also possesses. What the drop of water in the ocean has is found within the entire ocean. So, Aham Brahmasmi, we are of that nature. But we have unfortunately been associated with another element, and that element is called Maya. Maya brings about a state of forgetfulness of our true spiritual identity. And thus, being associated with the material energy, we have awakened within us a lust, a desire to enjoy that which goes against our true spiritual interest. And because of that, actually, the living being is transmigrating body after body after body. As you sow, so shall you reap. So according to the works you perform, the results will come. But here Krishna is teaching us the science of awakening our consciousness in relationship with the Supreme Consciousness, the Supreme Reality, the Personality of Godhead. Krishna says, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which are found within the Karma Kanda section, which recommend various fruitive activities for the elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. The living being is given the opportunity for the worship of God within the human form of life. We're the only ones, the human form, the human species, that recognizes that higher power. Thus we have constructed great mosques, temples, churches, cathedrals for the worship of God, the glorification of God. We may not understand the harmony behind all of this, but there is one supreme absolute truth, one God, just as there is one sun in the sky. May be known by different names, but there is only one sun. So our approach to God may differ from country to country, from system to system. But the uniqueness in the human form of life is that there is a recognition of God or a higher power. And Kapila Dev in the Srimad Bhagavatam says, in accordance with our approach to God, we will desire various types of achievements. Krishna tells us later on in our study of Bhagavad Gita that, practically speaking, you can divide this whole material realm into three modes of nature. That is goodness and passion and ignorance. So Kapila Dev, in speaking to his mother Devahuti, says, those who worship God but are influenced by the modes of ignorance or the modes of darkness, they may approach the Supreme but with a sense of envy, anger within their heart, because that is what is produced out of that tama, ignorant mode. Sometimes, because of that, we see there are some dangerous cults become manifest. Because the leader, although professing the worship of God, within his own heart, there's a darker side. And because of that darker side, there is a type of hatred towards others that do not follow his own path. He may condemn others without recognition of the greater picture. That if you don't worship my God, you're going to go to hell. They see God in that sense also. God is an envious God. God is an angry God. God will condemn you to hell forever. Where's this all coming from? It comes from the lower modes. Then, there are those who approach the Supreme motivated by a sense of desire. And so we approach God with the idea that He is our order supplier. Whatever we want, by the grace of God, it is achievable. So we approach God for those reasons. I remember way back when I was just arrived on the islands. I was just 20 years old. And someone on the street had talked to myself and my friend to come to one Buddhist temple. And we went, curious to see what was going on. And so they were chanting on their beads, and it was very nice. They were chanting their mantra. But then part of the service was such that each person would get up and tell us what they achieved from their chanting that week. And there were housewives telling us how they were in need of money and that they wanted a washer and dryer, but they could not afford it. And so by their chanting Nam Yoho like that, those things were available to them. So in every branch of religion, we see whether Christians or Buddhists or Hindus, it is according to our approach. We see God as the order supplier. So by the grace of God, we can achieve heaven. What is that? That is the state of perfection. That is the state when all my sense gratification will never be hindered by the reversal of the laws of karma, and thus I will have to suffer consequences due to my negative activities. That is heaven. A state where I can eat and drink and be merry without any problems of the negative that we find within this world. This is our idea. So, out of the mode of passion, we conceive that our worship of God will bring us great results. Now, Kapila Dev goes on to describe, then there is that man who approaches the Supreme Absolute Truth in the mode of goodness. And in that mode of goodness, he sees that actually this material world, it is a place of suffering, where birth, death, old age, disease, constantly going on. And that by the sense of selfless acts, glorifying God by offering the results of all his works to the Supreme Lord, he can become liberated and thus become free from the cycle of birth and death. But then Kapila Dev goes on to tell us that there is a fourth conception in service to God, and that is the transcendental conception, where the devotee of God desires nothing of this world nor of the next, but only desires to awaken within him his true spiritual nature. That is the path of Bhagavad Dharma, the path elucidated by Krishna within this Bhagavad Gita. It is also termed the Jaiva Dharma. It is the very religion of the soul. And what is that? It is the nature of divine love. To awaken our true spiritual nature means to awaken that which is inherent within us. There is a quality that is there within our very soul, which is a part of our spiritual makeup. In this world, it becomes translated in different ways, in accordance with the modes of nature. It becomes translated. But what is that need that the soul is hankering for? It is the need to love and be loved. And again, that can be translated in different ways according to the modes of nature. To love and be loved in the mode of ignorance may be expressed in a very violent way. In the mode of passion, it may be expressed in a very passionate way. In the mode of goodness, it may be expressed in a way that it even somehow transcends the physical need, but reaches the emotional needs. But the actual need for love has to reach up to the spiritual need. Because we are spiritual entities. Krishna has described, we are not this physical body, nor are we the mental makeup or the ego conception that we have developed living within this material body. Those things all change. The body changes, the mind changes, and the sense of self also changes, the ego changes. It all changes according to our association with the modes of material nature. So, even in one lifetime, sometimes we think of ourselves in different ways. We conceive of ourselves in different ways. We see as we change from bodies, Krishna has described, from boyhood to youth to old age, we're seeing ourselves in different ways. And then, especially in accordance with our association, we might identify ourselves in different ways. One stage of our life, we're students. In another stage of our life, we're responsible individuals maintaining a family. At another stage of our life, hopefully before we reach the stage of responsibility, we may feel ourselves to be carefree, without any responsibilities, simply looking for the perfect wave, whatever it may be. And so we identify ourselves. I identify myself with the waves, or I identify myself with my family, or I identify myself with my studies. In this way, I've conceived of myself in a particular way. In the same way, I conceive of myself within a male body as male, or in a female body as female, or with a black body as black, or a white body as white, or according to the religious system I've accepted, I identify myself as a Christian, or a Hindu, or a Buddhist. But actually, we're transcendental to all these various conceptions. We are spiritual souls. Aham Brahmasmi. We are part of the Supreme. And thus we reflect the nature of the Supreme. Sometimes people say, when they want to define God, God is love. Actually, love is a quality. It is that God possesses love, as you also possess love. In one sense, you can say God is love in the sense that the quality one possesses may be also made up of the characteristic of what one is. Just like fire is hot, so we may identify the heat with the fire, although the heat is a product of the fire. So the nature of God is that He emanates love. And the living being is searching for that love. And when our spiritual perfection is achieved, we find it ending in that love. So the path of Bhagavad Dharma, or we may call Krishna consciousness, is to achieve that spiritual perfection. But here Krishna now warns us, in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulences, and who become bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. The mind is the central factor here. And so the yoga process stems around controlling the mind. How to fix the mind with resolute determination upon our goal, upon the reality of our spiritual existence in relationship with the supreme spiritual existence. If we become bewildered by the external, we'll become distracted. And what happens when we become distracted? We lose our focus. And when we lose our focus, the attainment of our perfection may not come about. So Krishna warns us here, in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and become bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. The goal of our yoga is to achieve samadhi. Samadhi, Prabhupada defines here in his purport, fixed mind. To have the mind fixed upon one's higher spiritual interest. I would like to take the time to recommend that everyone get a Bhagavad Gita with commentaries by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and study this throughout the weeks. When I come back, then you may also have some questions, then you can jot them down. But it is very important that we hear the Bhagavad Gita and understand it in the light of one who has actually experienced the reality of the truths being expressed here. So I'm recommending that you read the purports of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Try to understand from his point of view, that is from the point of view of a self-realized soul, what is the reality that is being expressed. Once it was just asked of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada why there was a need for another translation of Bhagavad Gita. And he mentioned that in his observance of the various translations of Bhagavad Gita that were available, each of them were interpreted according to individual motivation, just like we were describing. A living being can approach the path of religion with a heart full of ignorance, passion, or goodness. Then, such persons who may comment upon these truths will also give their interpretation according to their perception. But they are seeing it through filtered glasses. And the self-realized soul means one who sees purely what is being directed, what is being expressed. So, in this way, we recommend that you study this Bhagavad Gita as it is, which has been compiled by a pure devotee of God, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and study his purports, and regularly try to read Bhagavad Gita and chant the holy names of Krishna, which have a wonderful cleansing effect upon the heart, so that one may perceive the truths that are being expressed here. There's one thing in theoretically understanding this knowledge, but it's another point in realizing it. And what it takes to realize it is that the heart has to become purified. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago, has given us a system by which we can realize the Vedic truths. And he has given us the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And this mantra should be chanted regularly on japa beads, which is a strand of 108 beads. When that mantra is chanted with fixed mind, one finds that it has a very purifying effect upon the heart. And then these truths, when studied, reach much deeper than simply the intellectual understanding, but reach way deep there within the very heart of our soul. So, Krishna goes on to say that the Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. But, Arjuna, you should become transcendental to the three modes. Be free from all dualities and free from all anxieties for gain and safety. Thus be established in the self. Krishna here says, now you must transcend all conceptions of truth that deal with or are filtered through the modes of nature. And you must become transcendentally situated. In that stage of transcendental absorption, you will become free from all dualities. You will see the absolute reality is present everywhere and within the heart of all. You will thus become free from all anxieties which arise for one's own gain and safety. Within this world, lacking the realization that God is always our protector, God is always our maintainer, we're always in anxiety. Anxiety for our own gain, anxiety for our own safety. But the devotee learns to place his faith in the Supreme, and that whatever is taking place must be by the grace of God. And in that surrendered state of mind, we can understand the lessons that the Lord wants us to learn from the experiences of life itself. Krishna says, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Therefore, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. In this world, we have to work. And work arises out of our natural inclination. Each of us have different inclinations for work. In the Vedic conception, that type of work was described according to Varna and Ashram. That meant, sometimes people take this wrongly when we begin to explain this, because immediately it brings up the red flag, caste system. But actually, every living being falls into one of these four categories: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Our inclination of work falls into one of these categories. A Brahmana means a person who is interested in higher education. It may include a teacher. It may include anyone in pursuit of knowledge and becomes a teacher to help benefit society with that education. Drona Acharya, for instance, he was a teacher and a Brahmana, but he was a teacher of the military arts. He was Arjun's military teacher. Now Arjun himself was a Kshatriya. Kshatriya is identified as the warrior class. But anyone who has the inclination to work in the category of law falls into that category of Kshatriya, whether he be a policeman on the street or he be a high court judge, or whatever it may be, involved with law. Vaishya means involved with business, and Shudra means a laborer class. So all of these different conceptions of work arise within the mankind due to different inclinations. We all have different inclinations. So Krishna says you have the right to perform your work in accordance with your inclination, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. That is, if one sacrifices the result of his work for the purpose of the glorification of God, then the results of those work will not become binding. One should live his life in the glorification of God. His work should also be in the glorification of God. Krishna is recommending in Bhagavad Gita here to Arjuna, you work for me, work in my glorification. He's not advising non-action. This was Arjuna's consideration. Maybe I should walk off the battlefield and become non-active. No, Krishna says, you have taken up this mode of work because of your inclination. Now do your work. But do it for me, for a higher purpose. Sacrifice the result of all your work for a higher purpose, and by offering it unto me. So don't feel yourself entitled to the fruits of action. See that it is for God. Never consider yourself the cause of the results. We may become in anxiety. What will be the result of these actions that I perform? Will I be successful? Will I be a failure? All of these things create anxieties within the mind. Krishna says, I will take care of the result. You just do your work. You don't have to be in anxiety. Sometimes there will be victory and sometimes there will be defeat. But as far as we're concerned, we have to simply do our best. And the result, we depend upon God. By the grace of God. May become success, may become a failure. All in His, all as He designs. So Krishna also warns us, never become attached to not doing your work. Live in accordance with your nature. Perform your duty, but be equiposed. Abandon all attachment to success and failure. And such equanimity, says Krishna, is called yoga. If you want to define what is yoga, yoga, Krishna says here, is that equanimity, where one remains peaceful at heart in spite of what is taking place around him. Such a person abandons his attachment to success and failure and places his hopes in the Supreme Lord Himself. Such a person becomes peaceful in mind and heart. The Vedas describe with the mantra, Hari Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. May you become peaceful. May you become peaceful. May you become peaceful. Everyone is looking for peace. So the Vedas give the blessing, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May you attain to that divine peace. Peace of mind, peace of heart. By residing within the reality of the Spirit. O Arjuna, keep all abominable activities far distant by the practice of devotion to me. And in that consciousness surrender all your works unto the Lord. Know that those who want to enjoy the fruits of their works are misers. Rupa Goswami, the devout follower of Lord Chaitanya, has described that we should make the consideration when we perform an action whether it will be beneficial for our spiritual growth or not. We should not base our acceptance or rejection of what we do upon any other principle. But if it will be favorable to my spiritual growth, then let me accept that type of work. If it will be go against my spiritual growth, then I should reject it. So Krishna says here, O Arjuna, keep afar from all abominable activities. Distance yourself from those things by always being concerned with your devotion to me. In that consciousness, surrender all that you do to me, and do not feel yourself to be the recipient of the rewards of such actions. Do not be a miser. Give them to the Supreme Lord, and thus everyone will benefit. The idea is something like pouring water on the root of the tree. When you pour water on the root of the tree, then naturally the whole tree flourishes. If we give the result of all our works to the Supreme Lord, then our whole life will flourish. We don't have to worry about every leaf and flower. Everything will be taken care of if the root is nourished. We don't have to go about pouring water on the leaves and the branches and so forth. We pour out the root. God is the root of everything. So we do our work for Him. We live our life for His purpose. That is what is meant to become devotee of God. To live one's life in the glorification of God. And when our acts are in harmony with God's will, then our life is also in balance. And if our work goes contrary to God's will, then we find our life is also out of balance. And when life is out of balance, there is no peace. It is ashanti. Ashanti, ashanti. No peace, no peace, no peace at all. So the living being can find such peace within himself by learning to harmonize his every action in the will of the Supreme. And so Krishna gives us various talents, different abilities. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am the ability in man. What special talents you each have, God has given you. Now do your work and glorify Him by doing it perfectly and saying, my dear Lord, today all I do is for your pleasure. There's a nice mantra, but it basically translates to this. When one wakes up in the morning, one should think, today, my dear Lord, all that I do is for your pleasures. I sacrifice all that I do in your glorification. If one thinks like this every morning, then he can lead a very peaceful and wonderful life in harmony with God. And if something negative comes up during the day, then one can think, there's something to be learned by this. Certainly, it is understandable that I've performed various activities in the past which were of the negative nature, and negative results are certainly part of my allotment at this time also. So maybe I should just accept what is coming by the grace of God and know that as I play this all out, I am also washing away all karmas. The devotee of God does not live within the realm of cause and effect. In reality, he lives in the transcendental realm, because every action he performs is for the purpose of pleasing the Supreme. It does not fall into the same category of man who acts with attachment to the results. Because with attachment to the results, the karmic law is in place. But the karmic law is transcended when the conception of work also transcends the idea that I am the enjoyer. Now I must see I am the devotee of God, and all my work is for His pleasure. Then I can live a life of peace and harmony within myself. By thus engaging, one verse I missed. A man engaged in devotional service thus rids himself of both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore strive for this yoga, which is the art of all work. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages and devotees free themselves from the results of the work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain that state beyond all miseries. This is the perfection of actions performed for the Supreme Lord. That is devotion offered to God through the works we perform within this world. We may term that karma yoga in the beginning, but the maturity of our karma yoga fructifies in the full-blown lotus of devotion to God. When we speak of devotion to God, in the beginning, there is a sense of maybe I'll become free from the bondage of karma by offering the results of my work to the Supreme Lord. But higher than that is simply the concept that may the Lord be pleased with the works that I perform. It is just like a person who gives a person a gift out of a sense of love. I brought you, just like you brought me those nice sweets. It is and nice card. What is that? It's an expression, actually, of love and appreciation. So that should also be expressed. Our love and appreciation, we may deal with other individuals with love and regard for them, but the highest love and regard should also be given to the Supreme. Just like we come to the temple, we offer our flowers to the Lord. We offer our food to the Lord. We offer everything to the Lord. Ultimately, we offer our work to the Lord, and in the highest conception, we offer our very selves to the Lord. And in that perfection of yoga, we achieve, as Krishna states here, freedom from the cycle of birth and death, and thus attain that state beyond all miseries. Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Radhe Hari. So, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions if anyone has any. If you want to sit and digest for a few minutes, we can do that too.
Your comment about life out of balance is interesting in that there was a film that came out several years ago. Koyana Scotty, which translates life out of balance. And it showed by illustration, no words.
Yes, I saw that film.
About what life out of balance is about.
Yes, a world of madness. Very nicely expressed through the art form of filmmaking, yes. A life of madness. If you observe it, as they observed it through that film, you could see that really, in a detached way, simply watching it all going on, it was a world of madness. Everyone's running about here and there. We've been discussing, most recently, that the Bhagavatam explains that the living being within this world, although he appears to be moving here and there really is no movement, because movement in the true sense means spiritual growth. So the Bhagavatam describes that we're like a tree. There is no movement to the tree. We're rooted in one place. So our consciousness is rooted within the worldly existence. And so we may be running here and there, back and forth, but where are we going? So it is like a crazy mind. The mind is going here, there, everywhere. And we can, like that film, take a distant look at it all, and from up above, the cars are speeding here and there, and man is running here and there, everywhere. But where are they going? Nowhere. So it's almost, we can say in one sense, like a crazy mind. We have a society where people are going here and there, but going nowhere. You go to the airports, packed with people flying here, flying there. Everyone's on the move. But real movement means spiritual movement. That was a very interesting word that Srila Prabhupada chose. The Krishna consciousness movement. I was thinking that movement is a very interesting word because it indicates real movement, real progress. Spiritual life is real movement, and it is the movement or the growth of the consciousness, like we were speaking earlier. It is the point of evolution from material to spiritual. That type of movement we're looking for. Otherwise, we're exhausting ourselves within this world. It's very exhausting, moving here and there, and finding that we've simply been on a treadmill all our lives. Any other questions? Yes? Anarthas and samskaras. Samskara really is translated to mean impressions. Just like if yourself being a psychologist, you know there are certain impressions there. A child is abused in their early years. There's a scar there, samskara. There's a scar on the psyche. These things don't only carry in this lifetime. One may carry those samskaras with one. And those samskaras bring about different types of phobias and different types of anxieties and so forth. The Vedic system is to fill the mind with positive samskara. Samskara, that word can be used in the positive or negative, just like karma is the positive or negative. So samskara in the positive means that which brings about, in the positive sense, brings about higher remembrances. Remembrances which are filled with good impressions. For instance, say a lady has been abused. Then when she gets into another relationship, there's always that anxiety because she's had that fear impressed within her psyche, right? But if from childhood our life is filled with happy memories, then we can have a happy frame of mind throughout our life. So therefore, the child's mind is so important to deal with in a proper way, that there is a healthy frame of mind as the child is growing up. So the Vedic system, there are so many things to give the child healthy impressions within the mind. It's even described for the person, for everyone, that when they wake up in the morning, they should immediately think of something positive or see something positive, something that helps you remember something in a positive way. That will help you in the beginning of your day. We always begin our day with chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Even first open your eyes, you think, Hare Krishna, like that. And then the morning proceeds with chanting a little bit and reading Bhagavad Gita. And if one has the opportunity to visit the temple in the morning, it's very nice. In India, it is seen, especially in Jaipur, a wonderful place, there is the temple of Radha Govinda of Srila Rupa Goswami. And the people there, they all, before going to work, stop in and get the blessings of the Lord in the temple. So in this way, the day starts off in a positive note. So positive samskaras we're looking for. Negative, it takes a long time to heal. We know that. It takes a long time to heal those negative samskaras. Then anartha are those unwanted things which we also carry, such as lust and greed and anger and so forth. They may come out of samskaras. They may come out of different mental impressions. Just like if a man learns how to proper respect for a woman from his very childhood, he gives honor and respect to women. Then when he sees a woman, he's very respectful and deals like a gentleman. Another some boy who's trained that a woman is is meant for giving him pleasure. The pleasure of the senses is what it's all about, and he sees women in that way. then that negative samskara is there. Every time he looks at a woman, he thinks in this way, that exploitation. How I can enjoy her, how I can exploit her. So there's a difference there. So it's all based upon proper education of morals and mindset from the very beginning of our life. So Krishna consciousness helps us to also cure ourselves of all these negative things, because that becomes very, very difficult, as we were just saying. So Krishna consciousness, if we're good fortune, we may be born in a healthy situation, our parents are loving and supportive, that's very good. And if by chance they're spiritually inclined, all the better. They will help us to see from a spiritual point of view. But if we're born in a negative situation, that becomes very difficult sometimes to cure ourselves of all that negative association or negative things that happened when we were young or carried over from past lives. But the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the best healing herb. It is the best medicine to cure ourselves from the diseases of this material life in all aspects, physical, psychological, and spiritual. We need to be healthy. Health is the key. Actually, the term shanti, shanti, shanti means, in the ultimate sense, may there be perfect health, body, mind, and spirit. And then, when mind, body, and spirit are in a healthy condition of life, we feel ourselves to be happy. Okay. One more question?
Now you say there are different classes of people, like say Brahman class. Let's say you are a teacher and you are doing a good job and teaching your students properly. Is there more that Krishna would ask of you than to play the role in this Brahman class?
Everyone, like we were saying, has a temperament. So if that's your calling, what more can be asked of you? You should be the best you can be. Of course, the whole picture the picture of Krishna consciousness in its entirety is such that ultimately we want to even transcend our material inclinations. They are born along with this body. But that is not to be done prematurely, because our inclinations are also very strong, and those inclinations will always pull us back into the realm of work in which we find our inclination. So sometimes people become overly enthusiastic in the sense, it's almost like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the example of a child who begins his first day of school and thinks now with great exuberance, oh, now I am a scholar. Now I've achieved. So sometimes a person is introduced to spiritual life and thinks that now they've become spiritual because they do a few things. They may chant Hare Krishna, now I'm a spiritual person. And so they think that, oh, I can renounce. So artificial renunciation then doesn't hold up in the long run. Renunciation is an ideal which we certainly admire when the inclination for renunciation is based upon an expression of devotion to God. That now let me do whatever the Lord wants of a higher sort, of a higher nature. That is, I gave the example once before. Srila Prabhupada used to give us the formula. Just try to add Krishna to your life. Just try to add Krishna to your life. That means do what you're doing, but add Krishna to your life. Remember Krishna every morning, every evening. Do something and to remember Krishna. And by adding Krishna to your life, gradually there's an amazing transformation that takes place. So I gave the example. It's like adding a yogurt culture to properly tempered milk. Eventually, the whole milk becomes yogurt, right? If we add Krishna to our life, eventually our whole life becomes Krishnized. In other words, in the beginning, spiritual life means let me do what I do, but in the service of God. That is, let me bring God into my world. But the higher stage of bhajan, which is another subject matter, which we won't dive into too deeply at this time, but the higher principle ultimately is let me add my life to God's. In the beginning we'll add God to our life, and in the higher stage of perfection we'll add our life to God's life, because God has a life also. And that is the wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedas. They give us a picture of what is God's life. Generally, God remains somewhat hazy. He's only known according to concepts. He's all powerful, he's all pervading, he's all love. He's known by concepts. But who he is, what he's doing, this type of information is revealed within the ancient Vedic literatures, the Srimad Bhagavatam most specifically. And so, gradually as one perfects one's spiritual life, he then wants to give his whole life to the Lord, so that he may enter into God's life. That is, at the end of this life, he'll be able to enter into that reality, that world, where the Lord himself exists. And why will one want to enter into that? Because one will feel the urge that within that realm, the highest expression of myself can be expressed. The highest nature of the quality of love, which I am composed of, will be able to be expressed within that realm. So, but while we're in this world, yes, we should do what we can do. According to our inclinations, according to our destination, we'll find ourselves engaged in certain types of work. But there's something also to the maturing process. As we get older, and as we mature spiritually, we will feel a natural inclination towards absorbing ourselves in the reality of the Supreme. And so the Vedic system is that as one gets older, naturally there'll be a sense of retirement from the worldly life, but retirement in the spiritual sense means now absorbing myself more in the devotional mentality, absorb more in my hearing and my chanting and my meditation upon the Supreme. That will come naturally. But for now, according to our inclinations, we should work in the service of the Supreme and not do anything artificial, just like the artificial state of renunciation, because a man will fall down. He won't be able to maintain it. What comes natural, that one should accept as his natural, what is called swadharma, his duty within life, and do it in the service of God. Jai Krishna. Brajvihari, you had a question?
I was going to ask about, you were mentioning before that violence is something that we should try to avoid.
Sure.
And I see, Bhagavad Gita's setting seems to be revolving around this war.
Well, ultimately it's to stop the violence.
Yeah.
Sometimes violence is used. Violence without any purpose should be stopped. Sometimes violence has to be used. Just like there's the ancient conception in martial arts. It seems to be that you're learning martial arts, but it is actually meant to learn a life of nonviolence. Sometimes it may appear to be paradoxical. How is that? But sometimes there is certainly a utility to violence. The police, for instance, they have to learn how to ward off a man who is violent by nature. They don't want to be violent, but they utilize the martial arts or whatever to avoid violence. There's a scenario in which a man has become crazy and he's shooting up a stadium or whatever. They have to come and know how to deal with them. Arjuna was simply trained as a Kshatriya. Kshatriya means, in the true sense, one who gives protection. So it is not based upon a scenario in which Krishna is encouraging violence. Krishna never encourages violence. Krishna teaches the path of non-violence. But there's a utility sometimes for violence when it is required to stop violence. So Arjuna was a Kshatriya. The scenario is such. He had to place himself into this situation. And that's why Krishna says you have to act responsibly. Not act irresponsibly, but act responsibly. And do your duty now. You're meant for protecting mankind, giving shelter to those who are under your care and protection. The government is like that. They're meant to protect the innocent civilians. So therefore we have an army or a navy like that. They're meant to protect us in case someone comes and directs violence towards us. So Krishna is not encouraging violence. He's encouraging that Arjuna be prepared to execute his duty for which he has been trained. He's been trained in warfare, and now the situation has come about. He should not walk off the battlefield. He's been trained in a way in which he is meant to uphold the principles of religion. So Krishna says, therefore you fight. Act in a way in which you've been trained, which has come about by your own inclination, and protect the innocent persons by establishing within this world the principles of Dharma. Otherwise, the negative will take place, Duryodhana will gain power, and the principles of adharma will be there. There's always the struggle between good and bad, the positive and the negative. And Arjuna and his brothers, the Pandavas, represent the highest ideal of religiosity, dharma. And Krishna therefore is reinforcing that the good should pervade over the evil. And so therefore fight and establish what is correct within this world. Because if we don't, sometimes, then the negative can become powerful. And if the negative becomes powerful, will the world be a suitable place to live? If someone didn't react to Hitler's oppressions, then what would be the world today? So someone had to act in a way to try to curb such madness, right? So would we consider that violence to try to curb Hitler's madness? No, we don't consider that violence. We consider that protection. So a Kshatriya is a protector. Mm-hmm.
In connection to this, I've had this conversation recently with somebody
Mm-hmm.
discussing the Bhagavad Gita
Mm-hmm.
and the study, and they quoted Jesus where he taught about turning the other cheek, or Gandhi's nonviolent movement, fusing the two.
Mm-hmm.
And Buddha taught nonviolence. This was not their way of.
So that's very nice.
Would that fall from that statement?
So what shall we do?
Yeah. What should we do?
Hitler's there, we'll all turn our cheek, let him take over, huh? What shall we do, huh? No. Certainly, when nonviolence is appropriate, then that is the first plan of action. And in fact, because they didn't study the Mahabharata, they don't know that actually Krishna put the plan of nonviolence into action first. Krishna put the plan of nonviolence into action. But Duryodhana would not still submit. He was the aggressor. So what can be done? Something had to be done. So Krishna is not encouraging violence in any way. He's just saying now we have to deal with the situation which is escalating. When we enter into the Bhagavad Gita, we're entering into one chapter actually of the Mahabharata which tells the whole scenario, and we get a little summary of it in the first chapter here. But the Mahabharata tells the whole scenario. And the first thing that Krishna did was try to settle the situation by the acts of nonviolence. And even his expansion, his incarnation, so to speak, Balaram, showed another side. He himself actually did not participate by leaving the whole area. So Baladev, he showed, Balaram, Krishna's brother, who is the first expansion of God to himself, showed in another sense he would prefer that, not to see such violence take place. So he left. the battlefield. He left everything. But on another hand, Krishna was teaching that when a situation arises, we have to deal with the necessity at hand. So there is always going to be a need for the Kshatriya class to give protection to the innocent. What if someone comes and wants to beat your child with a baseball bat? Will you say, turn your other cheek, my dear son? You'll say, turn around and not look? No, you'll immediately take action, won't you? Could you stand to see someone coming to beat your child? Should you turn your other cheek? No. You will take action. So, Krishna is the Supreme Father. If he sees his children being beaten, will he turn his... No, he will say, put something into motion. So he tells Arjuna, fight. Execute my will. My will now, which has always been, is that there is peace and harmony. But there are aggressors amongst us. Therefore, you must fight. Just like the natural inclination for a father, it's not to turn his cheek when he sees someone coming. Well, what can I do? This is... Providence takes over, right? Just smash him. No, you're going to take action. So don't speak such foolishness. When there is necessity, any man will take the action of violence if it is required. And it is not violence at that point, it's protection. Jai Gaur Premanandi Harival Shiva Desh.